start all over again. Good morning, everyone. We have a pretty good agenda today, and we'd like to have all of your help in whatever you may have to say today so that we can get our folks back home to where they want to go, and likewise with all of you folks out there. So, having said that, may I have the roll call, please? Yes. Here.
Present.
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 Here. Here. Items needing commission action. For the items on the agenda required an action by the commission is indicated on the agenda following the present names. Now, if we'll move on to item number 2, if we may please, the minutes of May 23rd. Any questions? Any changes?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3.
Okay, Commissioners, I have several items to report on. Before I go into my agenda items, I want to let everyone know that we are testing the commission meetings effective today by going live. So just want to remind you of being mindful. You will be on camera as you are speaking, so we're going to see how things work out today. In Commissioners, first item, I'd like to welcome Susan Branson back to the California Transportation Commission.
Would you stand, please? Would you stand, please? Would you stand, please?
And I want to thank Malcolm Doherty, Caltrans Director, for allowing me to steal Susan back to the Commission.
Go ahead, Susan.
Commissioners, I just appreciate this opportunity to come back and work for all of you again. Look forward to working on your challenging assignments. Looking forward to working with all of you out there and those of you who are not here but are watching on webcast. And Malcolm, thank you for everything. Just enjoyed so much working with you.
Okay, welcome, Susan. Commissioners, later on the agenda, you'll be hearing report from Laurel Jansen, item 17, and that's the Proposition 1A program amendment. And Chair Dan Richards from High Speed Rail Authority wanted to make sure that I convey his appreciation for meeting with Commissioner Frommer, Commissioner Tavallone, and myself, responding to their letter of working collaboratively on revisiting the business plan and looking at the blended approach. So he wanted to make sure that I convey his appreciation to all of the commissioners and commission staff, as well as the local agencies, in pulling together a list of proposed projects. The next item, Commissioners, is the Needs Assessment Workshop. We had our second workshop that was hosted by SACOG in Sacramento. Very good participation. We probably had a total of 50, probably about 30 to 40 that participated in person and the remainder that called in. And seeing a lot of energy into this effort, and the next workshop will be July 18th in Oakland, hosted by MTC. Looking forward to being in MTC land. And at that meeting, we're going to start looking at the proposed recommendations for generating new revenue, also policy recommendations. And right now we have a total of, we have 4 workshops scheduled. We're looking at each workshop being a building block and looking forward to bringing a list of proposals to you for adoption, hopefully at the October meeting. So we'll keep you apprised as we continue to work on this effort. Commissioners, the last item, and I think I really want to make sure, I can't underscore it enough, after today's meeting, you will have allocated all of the projects that were adopted in the initial Proposition 1B program. That's the CMIA as also the Route 99. And both of the programs, Route 99 and the CMIA, not only include the initial projects that were approved, but all of the projects that we amended into the program to utilize the cost savings. So that is a huge testament for everybody in this room that worked really hard. And commissioners, as well as, all of your patience and guidance that you provided to everybody in this room, we will be putting in some documents together that really will show a program, at least on the CMIA, that was about $4.5 billion, and what has been leveraged using local dollars, other state dollars, and federal dollars, over $11 billion programs. So it really shows that working together, we really can deliver a lot of good things. And Commissioners, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vilma. Next item is item number 5. Do we have any commission reports? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner
Commissioner Doran.
Tabellone. Just briefly, I was a panelist at a conference last week in Sacramento by the Refueling California Coalition. It was actually a very interesting conference talking about how the implementation of AB 32 is playing out on transportation fuels primarily. A lot of interesting, somewhat contradicting testimony given there. But what I wanted to emphasize to the participants was that obviously the Commission has nothing to do with the implementation of AB 32 other than our corner of 375, but that our concern is going to the needs assessment and looking at the enormous gap in funding and looking at what's happening with our highway accounts as fuel prices go up, as auto efficiency gets better. It is affecting the revenue that we're collecting for highways. And that was my part of the discussion, to talk about that. And we got some good comments afterwards, people coming up wanting to have further discussions with the Commission about how perhaps some of the funding that will be raised through the auctions of allowances and other things in 32 could benefit transportation. So hopefully some good dialogue comes out of that, but I did want to put those issues front and center for everybody to realize that it does have an impact when you increase fuel costs for us. It just drives down our revenue.
Thank you. Any other? Commissioner?
Chair
Diane?
Tabellone, I also want to report that I participated last week at a combined hearing of the California Energy Commission and the CPUC and CAISO, not in my capacity as a transportation commissioner, but as a business leader. But I did bring up the fact that as we move towards alternative fuels, that we can't lose sight of the fact that as diminishing as the Highway Trust Fund has been, at least it's been something, and to date we really haven't had discussions about the infrastructure portion for any of those vehicles as well. So I think it is important for us all to stay engaged in these discussions and make sure that we really do get integrated solutions.
Thank you, Commissioner Inman. Do we have any other commissioners with any reports? Thank you. Now I'd like to get into item number 5, commissioners' meetings or compensation. Are there any changes? Commissioner Gometti?
I have one correction. Commissioner Gardino and I on the 30th met with Supervisor Dave Cortese from Santa Clara County, not Santa Cruz County.
Okay, thank you. You'll make that change. Any other? Thank you. Item number 6. How about the welcoming committee, San Bernardino County? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hold on just 1 second. I'm pushing too fast.
I move we be compensated.
I second that.
Is there any no's in that? Are there any? Okay, thank you. Now, we'll have Janice.
Commissioners, I would not want to stand between you and your compensation.
Not much to stand between.
I understand that.
Better you than me.
My name is Janice Rutherford. I am a San Bernardino County Supervisor, and I have the honor of serving as President of San Bernardino Associated Governments. And on behalf of San Bernardino County's 24 cities and the entire Board of Supervisors, welcome to San Bernardino County. We are delighted to have you with us today. And I wanted to start by offering my gratitude and that of my colleagues for your service. I You are serving at a very difficult time in our state where we have immense challenges, and I see the size of your agendas there. That is not to be envied. Thank you for your hard work, your study, your diligence, and your commitment to helping California get through these rough times and come out of it better. I'd like to tell you a little bit about San Bernardino County. We are, as you may know, the largest county geographically in the United States. We are larger than the states of Delaware, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Jersey combined. We have a population of over 2 million people. Up until recently, we were growing pretty darn fast. Now we're at about 2% annually. You can see that we're a young county, we're a big county, and we are a county on the move. That's a bit of our picture. You can see our size. Perhaps you've driven through parts of our county on occasion. Despite the large geographic area, most people are surprised to learn that less than 20% of the county is under private ownership, and that the vast majority of that private ownership is already developed. Most of our folks live down here in the Valley region. That's what creates our traffic that you all deal with intimately. And we are challenged by the fact that we don't have a graphic on this slide. There we go. We are challenged by being at the forefront of not just our own growth and economic development here, but for the entire nation. You know, our county started with some Mormon settlers coming in over the Cajon Pass. It developed then with the railroads coming in the late 1800s. And then, of course, there's the famous Route 66, which brought migrants westward, and many of them settled here. Our county became, both for good and for bad, the center of the car culture. Think McDonald's, Baker's drive-thru, Taco Bell, all born here in San Bernardino County. And while we appreciate that convenience that we can have in our cars, we've also all been stuck in traffic, and we've also had to deal with some pretty bad air pollution. It's not just the people who live here who create that. It's the goods movement. It's the fact that we are the gateway to the United States through the harbors and ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, straight through our county. And I know you hear that when you debate our proposals for road improvements, and we hope that some of you will stay for the tour and be able to learn a little bit more about those challenges. We have incredible opportunities here. We are the heart of the latest green movement and solar energy throughout our desert. And while you're spending the day in a hotel room, I hope that you'll come back and spend your day doing some of those things in that lower quadrant there, because we have wonderful tourist and recreational opportunities that we hope you will avail yourselves of. I'm going to now introduce you to Sandbag's new executive director, someone you are very familiar with. He is going to explain to you how and why our county is poised to be the engine for the economic growth that we know is going to come as California rebounds and finds its rightful place in the global economy. Please welcome Dr. Ray Wolf.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you, President Rutherford. Let me jump ahead here a little bit. There we go. We are one of 19 self-help counties in the state of California, and in fact, in 1989, we passed our first half-cent sales tax dedicated to improving transportation in our county, because our leaders at the time recognized the importance of transportation, good, solid transportation infrastructure to a vibrant economy. In the first measure, which ended in 2010, we collected over $1.8 billion in sales tax. In 2004, recognizing that a few years down the road that first sales tax measure was going to expire, and that there were still many, many important things that we needed to deliver to our residents and to the overall community of the state of California, we passed an extension. I think it's important to recognize that extension passed with over 80% of the vote in 2004. And that shows the recognition of not only our elected leaders in the county, but also of the residents of the county and the needs that we have in this county. As President Rutherford just commented, goods movement is a major factor in our communities dealing with congestion and air quality issues, pollution and the like. This extension is a 30-year extension. It started in 2010. We're hoping to collect, or expecting to collect, over $4 billion with this extension. And we're moving forward with a major project program that we've basically set a strategic plan that was developed in 2009 to identify the prioritization of projects moving forward. Let's take a look at our annual budget that we just approved at our June board meeting, beginning of this month. We have nearly $750 million budget for the next year for Sandbag, focused on transportation projects. And you can see that the bulk of that comes from Measure I, and the remainder primarily comes out of state and federal sources. Breaking that down a little bit, nearly $500 million of that is focused on major projects. And I want to talk about these three elements individually. The first one let's look at is interchanges. This represents over a third of our major project budget. We're looking at 29 interchanges to improve or replace to improve goods movement and overall mobility throughout the county. To set the priority for these interchanges throughout the county, we developed a 10-year delivery plan that identifies which projects go forward first to receive funding. The next piece is grade separations, and we've all talked about grade separations over the years and the importance of that to separate local traffic from rail traffic, to improve goods mobility, to improve safety for commuter rail as well. And again, this represents nearly a third of our major projects budget, with 21 grade separations planned. The image that you see in front of you is actually the Haven Avenue grade separation just north of where we're conducting this meeting today, that was completed just a few years ago. The last piece of the major projects pie is focused on freeway projects, and I want to thank you for your efforts helping us in the past. One of the largest freeway improvement projects that is underway in our county right now and represents the largest project that we've had in a long time is the I-215 reconstruction in downtown San Bernardino. That project has a large amount of stimulus money on it, and I was hoping to give you an opportunity to go out there and see it, but we won't have that opportunity. But the project will be done next year. It's a project that's been underway for the last 5 or 6 years. One of the things that you have on your agenda today is an allocation for the Bi-County project. Unfortunately, it's been on your last 2 agendas. I'm here to tell you that it's ready today. But the important thing in this is this will fill the gap in the HOV network from the big interchange in Riverside and from the 91 HOV project that's currently under construction in downtown Riverside through San Bernardino. It'll basically create an HOV network from Los Angeles and Orange counties all the way through downtown San Bernardino. It's got to be the longest network that we have, I think, in the state at this point. Less than a third of our overall project delivery is focused on this right now, but this is a growing program. We are looking at major improvements moving forward on Interstate 10 from the LA County line moving east through the city of Redlands. The other piece, so that represented about $500 million of the nearly $750 million budget that we have this year. The other piece is focused on commuter rail, working with Metrolink. We have an extension of the existing Metrolink, which currently ends at the depot in downtown San Bernardino at the BNSF yard. We're looking at extending that rail all the way to the University of Redlands. And so that's a project we're working on right now. We also work closely and provide funding, pass-through funding, for 5 transit operators throughout the county, and the largest being Omnitrans, which serves the entire valley area. And then we've got 4 other transit operations that serve the mountain desert communities. The last thing I'll talk about is Council of Governments. In fact, Sandbag was originally constituted as a Council of Governments in 1973, and as we moved into the transportation realm, we kind of shifted our focus more into transportation. And as we move forward now, we're trying to reinvent ourselves as a Council of Governments and moving forward to do some great things in that area for our community. And I'd like to leave you with a parting thought from Henry David Thoreau. Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been. I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders. And what I'm hoping that you have heard today and that you will see as we move forward is that we have sowed the seeds of success in this county. We have the leadership that's going to carry us forward. We're going to address the major problems that exist currently, working with you and with our regional partners to make a better San Bernardino County, because the size, the geographic diversity of our county really lends to our success helping the state come back and become a prosperous, vibrant economy. As we begin our speech, we handed out two things to you. We handed out a year in review, and I would just ask that when you have time in the hotel later tonight, after the events tonight, that you take a look at some of the major projects that we accomplished in the last year, and it'll give you kind of an idea on things that we're moving forward in the next year as well. You also received a blue slip of paper that had a flash drive attached to it, and what this is it's a 6-minute PowerPoint presentation. It'll automatically run on your computer, and it focuses in on the DeVore interchange. And while we weren't able to get a tour together for this trip, what I will commit to you is that we will create a virtual tour, and I will provide to you in a couple of months at another commission meeting another flash drive, unless somebody says, I just don't like these flash drives. But the coordination, I think, is going to be difficult. Certainly, we will try to work to bring you down for a tour at a later date. But I wanted to give you a sense of the major work that's underway right now on some of our major corridors. So we'll provide a virtual tour for you in the future. I thank you very much. Again, thank you for coming to San Bernardino County, and have a great meeting, and look forward to seeing you this evening at the reception.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone have a question that you might want to ask anyone? All righty. We'll go to item number 7, Bimla.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Brian Kelly is not able to make it to the commission meeting today. They are working very diligently. Hopefully the governor will be signing the state budget, so he sends his regrets.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll move on to item number 8. Caltrans Director Malcolm Doherty, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and as Bimla said, Acting Secretary Brian Kelly is in Sacramento working on helping resolve all the outstanding questions on the state budget. I have a couple of housekeeping items or personnel items that I would like to point out today as part of my update. You may have heard that Mr. Marty Tuttle, the Caltrans Deputy Director for Planning and Modal Programs, is leaving Caltrans. He's going to be the city manager for the city of West Sacramento. During that time period, during our transition to trying to backfill that position, we've asked Kome Ajizi to step up and take over that role on an interim basis. He will not be shedding his P3 responsibilities. He will be doing both.
Poor COVID.
But I have the fullest confidence that Kome will step in and fill in that position because of his planning background without us missing a beat while we backfill that position. Also, very exciting recent news. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the new Caltrans District 8 Director, Mr. Bassem Whelan, who is in the back of the room, who was appointed as of yesterday. And next to him is Syed Razan. I'd also like to express my appreciation to Syed, who filled in as the district director for the last several months and did a gallant job. So thank you, Syed, for your help on that as well. I will try to give a little bit of an update on federal reauthorization, and Vince Mamano may be able to add to this, but there's a lot of activity going on the federal side. And overnight last night, negotiations produced what appears to be a draft deal that leaves just a few items unresolved, but it presents as a potential global structure of a deal. Moving forward, some of the details of it is the term of the bill is looking like September of 2014, so it actually would be a 2-year deal, which is farther out than was previously anticipated. There are still a lot of hurdles that have to be done. It would be a stable funding proposal. They are no longer talking about the Keystone Pipeline as part of this bill. Still in question is mass transit formulas. That's one issue that we're looking at very closely. And really, what has to happen is the majority of each of the House and Senate conferences have to get the bill out, and it has to be filed by the clerk and sent to each of the full House and Senate for a majority vote before it goes to the President. So there's a lot to do by the end of the week, but it looks like there's at least some optimism and some progress on the federal reauthorization, and hopefully Vince can add on to that as well. You'll be hearing from Comey Ajizi today on the Presidio Parkway project on the heels of the successful 57-hour closure, which shifted traffic over to a seismically safe facility. On June 14th, that project made financial close. I will steal some of Comey's thunder by sharing with you your authorization for availability payments was at the $35 million level a year. At financial close, it closed at $22.1 million a year. So I think that is very good news, and Comey will expand on that. The other good news about that project is we expect Phase 2 construction to begin in August of this year, and I thank Comey Ajizi for his hard work in getting that project to that point. The Bay Bridge, San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, construction continues to make very good progress. The SAS main cable continues to take shape and is near completion. About 95% of the suspender cables are already hung, and the connection of those suspender cables to the lower brackets is starting. Load transfer, which is the next major milestone for that project, where they lift the bridge off its temporary support, is scheduled to start in August, and all work remains ahead of schedule for a Labor Day 2013 opening. I also want to expand or emphasize the significance of the delivery of the CMIA and the Route 99 Proposition 1B projects. Your Executive Director, Bimla Reinhart, adequately captured the importance of that. Some of those numbers, just to add, there were 54 original projects in the CMIA program, $4.5 billion. It leveraged $4.6 billion of additional federal, state, and local funds. And ultimately, we recaptured $1.1 billion of savings, which pushed out an additional 38 projects, again, all in the CMIA. And let us not forget that not only are those projects creating significant mobility improvements, it also generated an estimated 190,000 jobs along the way, and the same goes for the 99 bond program, and the allocation of the last original program commitment will be made today, and I commend you for all of your efforts, as well as CTC staff, Caltrans, and our local partners in getting to that point. You'll get a presentation on the Paramount Bridge, Route 60 today, highlighting the replacement of that bridge after the tanker fire. What I'd like to, and you'll see some details on that, what I'd like to suggest is we've committed to come back in July and present to you the department, an update on the department's research and innovation efforts. I would also suggest that we could come back and talk more about the lessons learned from replacement of that bridge, and how we can glean from the successes there, and in how that was a special case and we may not be able to implement that on other projects, but at least expand on what opportunities may exist. So I'd offer that up to you for July meeting updates. And with that, I will conclude my comments and would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Malcolm. Commissioner Inman?
Malcolm, thank you. It's my understanding that the freight provisions were edited out of any federal bill. Is that your understanding as well?
I have not heard that update, so I will defer to Vince if he knows any information on that, but I can look into it.
Okay. I think the projects of national and regional significance made the cut, but at least I heard that freight did not. But be that as it may, I think given the importance to our state, and with Marty departing, will you be sure and remind Comey that the importance of goods movement to our state?
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you again, Malcolm.
You're welcome.
Item number 9. Mr. Mamano?
Single digits.
Excuse me, sir. Would you mind sitting down? I was supposed to go to 8 instead of 9.
That's what I thought.
I thought he was sitting down.
I was. Listen, that's accurate. I'm not offended.
Yeah.
Did we jump 8? See, look.
Please don't take it out on us. You always have a check sometimes.
Oh, it's taken out on you.
Thank you.
Especially since I was the only one that they said, oh, by the way, we're being recorded today. So I got to... camera. That's like the one bald spot on my head right there. To Malcolm's, Vince being able to elaborate any more on the federal, I have no comment. So Malcolm's got pretty much the same information I had. The one thing that they're still talking about, though, is a short term, that they might have to do a 3-month to get to that 2-year, that they might have to do it, because that ends this on the 30th. So they might have to do a 3-month extension to allow them to close out the 2-year, 1 to 2 year that they're going to do. So a couple things I wanted to hit. Congratulations to, I know that the effort that Comey and the staff here did and to get to financial close on the Presidio Parkway. That's a big effort. I don't think a lot of people understand that really what goes into that, and it was daily conversations. I know with Comey, our partners everywhere, our headquarters office. It was interesting to see it all happen, and I just hope everybody recognizes the effort that. I know there's a lot of people that did a lot of work, but I know Comey and his team did a huge effort to get that thing done. So congratulations to them. Tiger was announced just recently, so there's more Tiger grants that came out. There was about $500 million across the country, 47 projects in 34 different states and D.C. Free cookie outside, if anybody could tell me what Tiger actually means. Oh, come on. Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery. So that's Tiger. So California got 3 projects, got $15 billion for Port of Oakland to increase rail access to the port and the capacity in the port. $15 million to the Sacramento Valley Station, train station, and then $10 million to the Mission Bay UC San Francisco Hospital Multimodal Transportation Infrastructure Project. So congratulations on getting 3 projects there. Toll credits, we talked several months ago about the toll credits getting approved. There was a request into Federal Highway. We just recently approved on May 31st, approved the use of $4.2 billion in toll credits. So I know there's a lot of work that Norma Ortega and her team did to help justify that, so that's a great job. And what toll credits do, it adds a lot of flexibility to the federal dollars. It creates the match, so it essentially is you're getting credit for where you're doing other toll collecting elsewhere. You're getting the credit, so therefore you don't have to put up the match. So it's kind of a ghost match to it. So that's excellent. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is DBEs. I know I try to talk about DBEs every time I get up here, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. My hope is that everybody, and this is kind of talking to you, but I'm hoping everybody out here is getting this. DBE, DBE, DBE. It's a big thing. It's real. It's important with the federal dollar, so we need everybody to understand what's happening now. I talked last time how the Secretary of Transportation pulled a waiver. Essentially what that pulling the waiver does now allows Caltrans to include all DBEs when they're meeting their goals on contracts. So if you have a 6% goal on a contract, previously to this waiver being pulled, if the whole project was being done by a Hispanic contractor, you've met 0% of your goal because Hispanics were not considered underutilized, so you weren't able to count them towards your goal. Now, with the pulling of the waiver, all DBEs are included. So we've worked very closely with Malcolm and his team to put together a plan on how to implement that. So right now, all Caltrans projects, as of last Friday, all Caltrans projects advertised will have the new DBE program in it. Will include all DBEs. So it may be by addendum. So if you see a project that's out there today that's getting advertised yesterday, and you notice that it doesn't have the DBEs, the new DBE program in it, it'll get fixed by addendum. So that's something that Caltrans is committed to. And then the other part of that is the locally administered projects. So the minimum is all locally administered projects authorized after July.
June 30th.
After June 30th. How do you say July 30th and on, or do you say after June 30th? Put that in the letter. So everything after June 30th, all locally administered projects authorized after June 30th will include all DBEs. Now, one of the things we want to make sure everybody understands is that doesn't mean that you can't do the projects that are authorized before July 1st and use the new DBE program. So what we're asking everybody to do, and you're going to probably be getting some calls, locals are probably going to get some calls from Malcolm and myself encouraging you to implement the new DBE program, get the new goals on the projects, to make sure that we're including all our disadvantaged businesses in our federally funded projects. These are federally funded projects. If it's state only, it's not, DBE does not apply. So that's a big piece of information too. Those are the biggies I had. Did any? Yep. Oh, and 1273, those of you who do contract administration, there's a final notice in the Federal Register that went out on the 25th. The new 1273, which is the form that gets stapled to all contracts, it has pretty much all your federal requirements, Buy America, DBE, Davis-Bacon wages, all that stuff. There's a new final notice that went in there. There's a lot of information in the Federal Register. So you might want to take a look at that because that's getting implemented very soon. Anything for me?
Any questions?
I love no questions. I mean, all.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you
thanks.
very much. Item number 10, local reports.
Commissioners, good morning. Jose Nuncio from the San Diego Association of Governments on behalf of the Regional Transportation Planning Agencies. The RTPAs met by teleconference yesterday and discussed a number of items. We heard a presentation from Stephen Keck regarding budget and allocation capacity. With pending items on the state budget and the latest federal continuing resolution coming to an end on Saturday, we find ourselves not really knowing what will happen next fiscal year. The RTPAs are optimistic that funding will continue to flow, but recognize that if no action is taken, ongoing projects could be impacted and suspended. In today's agenda, you have adoption of the amendment to the 2012 STIP guidelines to make official the changes related to the AB 3090 rules. The RTPAs want to thank Mitch Weiss of your staff, excuse me, of your staff for meeting with the regions, listening to our concerns, and reflecting many of our requests in the guidelines. Laurel Jansen also provided an update on the Prop 1A program. The RTPAs remain optimistic that the legislature will act favorably and that the governor will approve the funding and the use of these funds for non-PTC projects. Many of these projects and jobs have been waiting in the wings for these funds for quite some time. We want to thank the Commission for working with the High Speed Rail Authority, BTNH, and the Department of Finance to reach this point. We also had a presentation from CTC staff on the proposed policy for CMIA savings generated between now and December 2012. Most everyone agrees that the SHOP is a critical program that needs more funds. However, several agencies voiced concern about implementing a policy that essentially would shut out projects that best meet the guidelines and voter intent of the CMIA program if they were brought forward in the next couple of months. We recognize that the Commission may want to have a clear path forward, and to that effect, we would request the Commission to extend its current policy of bringing projects that are ready to list for another couple of months and deferring implementation of the proposed policy to later in the summer. We also discussed the Commission's calendar for 2013. As you know, the RTPAs have historically met in the morning of the Wednesday prior to the Commission's meeting. This has allowed a very valuable opportunity for agency staff to meet face-to-face with your staff, as well as Caltrans and FHWA staff, and also with our peers from other agencies. The Commission's calendar, however, has changed the format to a one-day meeting for 2013. From a logistics standpoint, and in order to continue to have face-to-face meetings with your staff, this may mean having our meetings a day or a few days prior to your meeting. Some agencies, particularly smaller RTPAs, do not have the staff or the travel budget to accommodate this potential additional meeting. We'll continue to work to look for ways to be as inclusive as possible for all of the RTPAs, while at the same time try to have as much face-to-face time with your staff and with Caltrans staff so that the region's concerns and issues can be effectively conveyed to them and also to you. Lastly, this is my last CTC meeting as RTPA moderator. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the next moderator will be Will Ritter from San Joaquin County, and the next vice moderator will be Adrian Cardoso from Orange County. I want to thank your staff and Caltrans staff for their assistance in resolving issues and for listening to us, the RTPAs, during this past year. I also want to thank you, the Commissioners, for your work and your advocacy for transportation on our behalf. Best wishes to you, and also to Will and Adrian. I'm sure you'll do a great job. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, and thank you. Do we have any questions?
I have a comment,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. I just, did you discuss at all I know it just came down within the last probably 48 hours, but there's, included in this budget proposal, state budget proposal, is about $130+ million a year that's being taken out of counties, and a little bit from Caltrans as well for excise tax money that is going into the general fund.
We did not discuss it.
It should be discussed because it's a problem, I think. When we have this agreements, there was a waiver, or there was a sunset put on the taking of this money. It was an agreement made in a previous budget, and now that agreement is being basically undone. And you got $130 million that counties which are already underfunded on this are now looking at even less money going in to maintain their roads. Notwithstanding the problems we have with the state budget, when voters become aware that money that is dedicated and collected for the specific purpose of doing specific things is then used for something else, this is what makes it hard for us to try to get additional funding down the road. They just don't have any trust.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Rural counties, Lisa?
Good morning, Commissioners. Sharon Scherzinger, Executive Director of the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, on behalf of Lisa Davy Bates in the Rural Counties Task Force. One of the things that I'd like to thank the Commission and Caltrans for doing is webcasting the Commission meetings. It's particularly challenging for the small rural counties that come from very distant areas to attend these meetings, so it's been a good cost savings and time savings to us, and we appreciate that. We haven't had any Rural Counties Task Force meetings since your last Commission meeting. However, we did have a very strong attendance at the needs assessment meeting that you held. One of the things that we'd like to emphasize are several key areas of the needs assessment from a rural perspective. First and foremost is equity in terms of the distribution of funding for transportation. The second is maintaining the system we have. That's a critical factor in the rural area of the state. And the third is to keep in mind that we are farm to market in the recreational areas of the state, and so those are important to us. The other area that we had talked about a little bit was federal reauthorization, and I'm optimistic that hopefully we'll have a new bill passed soon. And we would like to be involved with any discussions we have in terms of state implementing legislation. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Commission for the rural counties that receive CMA bond funds. It was an excellent partnership between the state and the local agencies and the Commission to get those delivered. And we appreciate that. We don't have very many options not having sales tax. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Self-help counties?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Diane Steinhauser with the Transportation Authority in Marin, here on behalf of Self-Help Chair Andy Chesley, who couldn't be here today. He sends his regrets. The Self-Help County Coalition is continuing our interagency coordination with regular quarterly meetings with Acting Secretary BT&H Brian Kelly and Brian Annis as well, and we are getting the word out on the issue raised by Commissioner Arp associated with the removal of funding from the budget, so we should be seeing some letters coming in on that. Some of the issues we've been discussing are proposed reorganization and the augmenting of some project delivery sunset extensions, such as Design Build Authority, looking at developing a coalition on extending and expanding that authority in the future. The Self-Help County Coalition is sponsoring a bill this year, AB 1780, authored by Contra Costa Assemblywoman Susan Bonilla, to address PSR, which are Project Study Reports reimbursement. It continues to move through the legislature. It was voted successfully off the Assembly floor on a vote of 75-1 recently, and it's going to be heard July 3rd in Senate Transportation Committee. We've also been working with respect to the governor's budget to remove language from the administration's proposal for PSR reimbursement, and we'll know soon if the governor vetoes that request from us. Finally, I just wanted to put a plug in for our Self-Help County Coalition meeting. It's going to be in Orange County, November 13th through 15th this year. Please put it on your calendars. Everyone's invited to attend. It's an excellent opportunity for networking, and we'll definitely have some good topics again this year. And finally, I wanted to particularly thank, I think all of us do at the Self-Help Coalition, the efforts of CTC staff and Caltrans staff in monitoring and delivering the CMIA program. Your team placed good expectations on us. They monitored, they worked with us to solve problems, and as a result, we've been able to leverage a lot of our local funds with the bond program, and many of us are building projects that we would not have otherwise had a chance to build. So thank you. And that concludes the report.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Item number 13, Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Today I'd like to brief you on 3 bills in which the Commission has sent letters to the legislature. The first is AB 441. This bill would require that the Commission attach a summary of policies, practices, or projects that have been employed by NPOs that promote health and health equity to the Commission's next revision of the Regional Transportation Plan Guidelines. The Commission forwarded a letter expressing concerns on this bill on April 6th. Following a meeting with the bill sponsor and Commission staff, Andre worked very closely with the bill sponsors in working on the bill as we see as the amendment dated June 4th. This amendment addresses all the concerns that were expressed in the Commission's letter. Today, this is in the Senate for a 3rd reading. The next bill is ACA 23. This measure would lower the voting threshold to 55% for local sales tax by local governments to provide transportation funding. The Commission forwarded a letter of support on May 29th. This bill is scheduled to be heard in the Assembly Committee on Local Government today. The last bill I'd like to cover is SB 1102. This bill would require Caltrans, among other things, to report annually on the difference between the original allocation made by the Commission and the actual construction capital and support costs at project close, and would require the Commission to allocate funds for construction support costs for a project in the STEP at the time of allocation for construction capital costs. The Commission forwarded a letter of support to the author on April 4th. This bill is also scheduled to be heard in the Assembly Committee on Appropriations today. The legislature is scheduled to begin their summer recess July 6th. They will reconvene on August 2nd. All bills must pass each of the houses by August 31st, and the governor has until the end of September to either sign or veto the bills. At this meeting, the commission staff does not have any recommendations for action to the commission, and that ends my report.
Any question, commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you for the report. Could Diane Steinhauser or someone from self-help counties, or perhaps a county that isn't self-help yet but wants to be, are you all coordinating at all on ACA 23 with Assemblymember Perea? We talked about this at the last commission meeting, that I still haven't seen any polling that this is something voters would pass, though I certainly agree that it's what's the best policy. And could you comment at all on what you're trying to do with your networks, if that's okay with the chair?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
And also, Commissioner Gardino, my name is Debbie Hale. I'm with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, and I'm, I guess, the informal chair of the so-called aspiring counties. So we're not as numerous in population as the self-help counties, but there's at least as many of us, if not more. And one of our counties, Kern, I think that's maybe the largest of our counties, is the sponsor of the bill of ACA 23, and it's probably our top priority for the group, and it's really the issue that's brought us together, lowering the threshold. I know in our county, the folks that would support going again for a measure have said, wait until the threshold has been lowered. So those of us, you mentioned those who aren't self-help yet, and we are very strongly working on it. Our lobbyist, in fact, is testifying in favor of the bill today.
And Debbie, thank you. If you could stay there for a moment, because Kern County is a great example of tremendous need, a desire to help, some huge projects that they often appear before this commission on which to advocate, and yet are often represented in the Assembly and the Senate by folks who traditionally have not supported this threshold change. Is there a strategy to work at the local level to change some minds to improve their own transportation networks?
There is. The Central Valley is probably the most challenging region, and yet we have a lot of counties in the aspiring group that are working very hard at the local level. In particular, there is stronger support, I would say, and if Robert's here, he could speak more directly to their situation. But my understanding is that there is stronger support among the locally elected officials, and that they are meeting within their state elected officials. But Perea is an assembly member from that area. It's a similar situation, I think, in Ventura County, which is the next largest, or maybe even the largest of the aspiring counties.
And should we all agree that this is really Darius Assemi's responsibility to deliver the Central Valley votes?
Carl, I was just going to actually comment on that. There's a group of us, as you well know, that are working with our Valley electeds, both in the Assembly and the Senate.
You're a great American, Darius.
To help drive that.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Diane Steinhauser again. The Self-Help County Coalition is looking at developing support letters, and we would hope that at your workshop, we hope to bring forward, at least in the Bay Area, some discussion on this on July 17th. So we know from our vehicle registration fee program that many of us put on the ballot that 60% is achievable. So we're hoping to levy much more support for this.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you. Question?
My day job, please feel free to enlist me, as well as our role as commissioners, as we have endorsed this. Sorry, Commissioner Arth.
Commissioner Arth. If Commissioner Assemi can get some of the Valley folks to support this measure, we'll put him on solving world peace afterwards.
We're working on that too with Commissioner Gardino and Commissioner Gilmetti.
Oh, I hope that gets done. Item number 14. Mitch?
Go ahead, Stephen.
Stephen?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Keck with Caltrans Division of Budgets. I have a kind of a tough presentation to make today because, as you know, we're on the cusp of two budgets. We're dealing with the federal budget and state budget, neither one of which is solidified yet. So I'm going to do my very best to give you up-to-date information as I go through this. But the first thing I'm going to start with is asking Gino what's not working. Oh, there it goes. Never mind. So what we have here, first of all, is the summary of allocations through the last meeting being May, versus the allocation capacity for the current year. As shown on the chart, we've made about $5.6 billion in allocations through May and poised to do a huge amount at today's meeting. I don't know that this is the biggest year ever, but it looks pretty darn big to me. It's estimated that by the end of the meeting, if allocations are made the way we think they may, that we'll allocate all of the STIP capacity that was available in the year and leave just a little bit of the shop capacity on the table. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Most of the remaining capacity that may be left on the table is related to some of those bond programs like the TCIF that have a much longer timeline than CMIA and Route 99. This is also the meeting where I present the draft allocation capacity for the next year. Draft allocation capacity is based on new cash estimates and what we know about the state and federal budgets. And so there's a few things that have changed very recently that I want to talk about. I don't have a slide for it because it just happened the last day or so. The first being what Commissioner Arp already alluded to, and that's a change in the budget from what we reported at the last meeting. This is related to that new price-based excise tax on fuel used for off-highway and off-street purposes. So that would be for off-highway vehicles, for boats, for airplanes, and for agricultural vehicles. The legislature had previously passed a trailer bill that diverted those funds to the general fund for a 3-year period. Just yesterday or day before yesterday, a bill was introduced and passed by committee that made those transfers permanent. As was alluded to by Commissioner Arp, we're talking about an amount of about $130 million a year, a little bit less than that, that would otherwise have come into the regular HUDA split. It would be 44% for local counties, 44% for the STIP, and 12% for the shop. So doing a little math, we're looking at an impact of about $55 to $60 million per year each to the STIP and to local counties and cities, and about a $15 to $18 million a year impact to the shop. And so we had already accounted for the 3-year diversion. So I don't think we're going to see a change in allocation capacity because of this, at least not the allocation capacity we're recommending for next year. But it will have an impact in the long term because it's basically a diversion of $130 million more than what we had anticipated. On a related issue, I was recently asked to discuss the impact to aeronautics. The way the language is written was a little confusing. And I wanted to first say that this change will not impact the aeronautics funding in any way. The new excise tax that was based on the price of gasoline has never been transferred to the aeronautics account. It was in the bill. It basically clarifies that it should not be transferred to the aeronautics account. So there's no net impact to the aeronautics account. They will still receive their base funding on the 18 cents per gallon. The way the bill was written, it seemed like they were taking away all the taxes from aeronautics, and that's simply not the case. It just takes a little bit of research to get there. And we'll be sending a letter to the commission to clarify that, to make sure it's, everybody's on the same page. In terms of allocation capacity for the next year, right at this time we're recommending allocation capacity for the STIP, the shop, and the TC traffic congestion relief program only. We'll update you in July as to bond capacity, and that's simply because there's a lot of moving parts with votes that may happen today and some commission policies that may be discussed today. So we'll update that in July. The amounts that we have for these 3 programs are very, very close to what was estimated in the 2012 fund estimate. We're looking at about $1.5 billion for the shop in 12-13, $550 million for the STIP, and $83 million for the traffic congestion relief program. And that 83 is tied to the long-range payback program for all the loans and deferrals we had in the past. I will note that the PTA is showing an allocation capacity of $50 million during the development of the fund estimate, and in recent discussions we had thought that there may not be PTA capacity, but because of the high fuel prices, we're seeing a little more money flow into the fund. We're also starting out with a higher balance than we had anticipated, so we're able to recommend $50 million in capacity from that fund next year. Federal reauthorization update. I had originally planned or thought about at least just leaving this page blank and coming to you with a blank page in the presentation, because really that's we can fill in our own notes from the conversations that have already occurred. I don't have really anything to add to what's already been said, and Commissioner Dunn's not here. I was going to tell her what my odds were. I'm basically saying 80-20, and I bet, if I had to bet, that we'll do a short-term extension just to get the details worked out. But I'm optimistic for a change that we will have a longer-term transportation bill. And I think I'm in line with the insiders on the Hill. So it's actually looking pretty good this time. I will say, though, that today is the 1,001st day under extension of safety loop. That's a fact that somebody looked up for me. I thought it was kind of a neat one. 1,001 days. I also wanted to do something I don't normally do, which is to spend just a minute on what the impacts would be if transportation funding from the federal side just stopped completely, as happened with the FAA a while back. And these numbers come straight from a database that we share with the Federal Highway Administration. Right now we have more than 5,000 ongoing projects with federal funding in this state. And these are state and local projects, both. The information that we have shows that the contract value of those is at least $24 billion, and that includes other fund sources. And it may even be higher than that, just because we are not always able to collect all the data from agencies outside of Caltrans. In general, if funding were to stop flowing from the federal government, we run into a problem very quickly in the state side. Projects are going, they're spending money like gangbusters. There's 5,000 of them going on. We generally estimate that we run out of cash within a month or possibly 2 months. And what that means is, because we're paying for work in arrears, we would have to stop work on these projects within about a month of learning that we would no longer receive federal funding. So if people ask, what's the impact of not receiving federal funding, that's it. We go bankrupt in about 2 months. Now, of course, that's absent any emergency measures that we would try to take, like finding other fund sources or putting moratorium on project allocations and those sort of things. But it's pretty daunting to see that, to say, hey, this state of California, huge economy, would run out of money in the state highway account in 2 months if we stopped receiving those federal funds. With that shiny, happy note, I'll stop. The last slide of my presentation relates to the next item.
What was the bill number that you talked about that diverts all the funds permanently?
Commissioner Archer, you know that number off the top of your head?
No, I don't think it even has a bill number. It's just one of those things that just slides right on through.
It does have a number. I'll look it up while we move on to the next item. I'll let you know.
It does have a bill number. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Commissioners,
Mitch?
one of the things Stephen had presented was his preliminary allocation capacity for the STIP in the 12-13 year. We've done a preliminary analysis of the preliminary allocation capacity. It appears we'll have a difference of about roughly $50 million between the need for allocations and the capacity. That gets generated by things like extension, supplemental funds requests that are approved, actual pre-construction costs when they exceed the programmed amount, and post-cert right-of-way costs. $50 million is not a number to sneeze at, but as a percentage of our annual STIP, it's probably not large enough to require an allocation plan, but would create some tension for project delivery to be earlier in the year, and potentially a slight challenge for projects that get delivered in June of next year. We'll continue to look at this and work with Stephen and his staff as they finalize the number.
Any questions for Mitch? Item number 15, Juan, and,
Commissioner Art.
oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question, I mean, not a question, just a comment. You know, people are talking about sending letters in and stuff to get their viewpoint in. Tonight is the night, I mean, the governor either signs the budget tonight at midnight, by midnight or not. So I don't know that it's going to change anything, but, you know, if you're going to say something, say it now, not next week.
Thank you. And I should have mentioned that the state legislature is expected to take action on this bill today. And also that bill is AB 1466.
Juan?
Yeah. Next item.
Item number 15.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item number 15 is an information item, and this is the update on the Garvey bonding capacity. It's a review of the analysis provided by the State Treasurer's Office on an annual basis. And Steve is going to go over the results of the analysis. But the book item that we prepared for this, tab 15, we focused on how Garvey's apply to SHOP projects. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of points. And one is that this year's analysis showed a very high capacity that's based on a very large number of federal deposits, and this is an unusual amount, and Stephen's going to give you the details behind that deposit. But I also wanted to highlight that, you know, if the commission decides to start using the Garveys for next fiscal year, staff would recommend that we focus that we apply the limit, the 15% limit that's applied for Garvey, not on the all of the federal funds that were deposited, the $4 billion, but more on the amount of federal funds that go to the SHOP, which is $1.6 billion, much lower amount, and therefore it would be more of a conservative number that we would be looking at issuing for Garveys, and the bond cost would be lower. But it will still produce a bonding capacity of $2 billion. So staff would recommend that if we start, you know, considering the use of Garveys, that we look at the limit to be applied to the federal funds that are going to the SHOP. And Stephen will do the review of the analysis.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. This is a presentation you would normally receive from the State Treasurer's Office, but given the out-of-town nature of the meeting, I volunteered to do it. And I'll try to be a little bit more brief than they generally are. So this is a summary of their allocation capacity that they came up with, and in doing so, they followed the state law. The state law says, take a look at all the receipts received by the state from the Federal Highway Trust Fund in the last 12 months and estimate capacity based on that. So that's what they've done. And the allocation capacity that they have come up with ranges from a low of $2.8 billion to a high of $5.4 billion. This is 60% higher than the capacity that was in last year's report. The reason for that, there's two reasons for that. The first is historically low interest rates were used in this analysis based on the fact that we have historically low interest rates. They're looking at about 2% interest rate on, I think that's on a 12-year bond, which is very, very low. The second piece, of course, is that over the last 12 months, we've been collecting a lot of federal reimbursements from ARA projects. That was one-time money that we allocated starting 3 years ago and is going out the door like gangbusters. So when the treasurer looked at the receipts coming into the state, they counted all that ARA money. So it's really based on, as Juan mentioned, a lot of funds that we don't get on a regular basis, so the capacity is artificially high. So we would definitely agree with the staff recommendation that the commission look at some lower level than is allowed or that is indicated by this report, because it does include funding that's not available in the future. Any questions?
Any questions, Commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 16 is an action number.
Commissioners, item 16 is the adoption of amendments to the 2012 STIP guidelines. These amendments were pertaining to AB 3090 arrangements. There was a hearing at the last commission meeting based on direction from the commission. One change was made. We have inserted a couple of sentences in the guidelines on page 36 stating that a local agency may request the approval of an AB 3090 reimbursement arrangement that exceeds the aforementioned limits. The commission will consider such requests on a case-by-case basis. In evaluating such requests, the commission will weigh the impact exceeding the limits might have on the allocation of other STIP projects. With this change, as noted, staff recommends approval.
Any questions? Commissioner?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is that it?
That's it. So moved.
So moved. All those, well, I'm sorry, but you motioned to me, Commissioner.
We're on 16.
Yes.
This is 16.
Yes.
Right,
16.
okay. Thank you.
Are we square?
I'm good.
Okay, you're good. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a speaker on this item. Kurt?
Mr. Chairman, it was simply a thank you for your action on this. We especially appreciate your change on page 36 of the guidelines, and wanted to thank Mitch for making that change and working with us and the regional transportation planning agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 17 is also an action item.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the amended program of projects for the Proposition 1A high-speed rail, generally known as the Connectivity Fund piece of it. We do have a yellow attachment on the list of projects. It didn't print right in the hard copy, but it's okay on the computer copy. This revised program of projects has been developed in accordance with the Governor's vision for high-speed rail and in accordance with the letter sent from the High-Speed Rail Authority Board Chair proposing a partnership to develop a new program. The Authority in April released a revised 2012 business plan that included utilization of existing rail infrastructure in Northern and Southern California, which they call the blended approach. CTC staff then began working with the Authority, Business Transportation Housing Agency, Caltrans, regional and local transit and commuter rail agencies, and the Department of Finance to develop a revised program of projects that is consistent with that blended approach. 11 final project proposals were received and reviewed for consistency with that blended approach. We reviewed some of the MOUs that have been negotiated between the Authority and the regions. Several meetings and conference calls were held to address questions and/or concerns about those projects. Once those projects were thoroughly vetted by all the participants, they were presented to the High-Speed Rail Authority Board at its meeting on June 8th. The board had no concerns with any of the projects. Members of the public did voice some concerns. One project in particular, you have copies of some of that correspondence attached to the book item, and I think also in your packet. Staff just wants to thank everybody for the participation. It was a very cooperative effort, and everybody worked very hard on this, and we just wanted to thank all those agencies. Staff will recommend approval of this amended program, and I know that there are agencies here to speak about their projects. In particular, you may want to hear from San Francisco Muni about their project that had some concerns.
Thank you. Any question, Commissioner?
A question and a comment. Laurel, first, my big question here, and I think we've ironed out a lot of the connectivity issues, or at least the staff, I believe now has a satisfaction that we're within the ambit of the law. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my question is more a political and procedure question. I was in Sacramento yesterday. I met with Dan Richard for a few minutes. We have not had a vote yet in the legislature on this new business plan. And if you read the papers today, it's not looking good. So my question is, if we get out in front on this now and approve these projects, and the legislature votes down or amends or attempts to amend, and they have to go back to the Authority, obviously, for approval, because they don't really have the ability just to amend it unilaterally, but where does that leave us with these projects? Because I think for myself, and just speaking for myself, and I'm sure others may feel this way, we've now voted twice on this list, and we've been shot down twice. And I'm really not anxious to do that again. So do we have some sense on what that means? Do we need to put any language in a motion that says it's contingent on the outcome of the legislative vote?
I don't think language like that would be necessary. I mean, any programming is always going to be contingent on an appropriation. So that's sort of automatic. I think that, I don't really know what's going to happen in the legislature. We have the full support of the agency and the High-Speed Rail Authority, and I don't know how much more we can do really other than that to get this list of projects approved and vetted by everyone. We just have to wait and see. I think if they're still tying the appropriation to the bigger piece, that is still a concern that we have. But we've gone through everybody with these projects.
So to be clear, just to satisfy my question, today we're programming money. It's subject to a future appropriation by the legislature. So we could go back and change.
Correct. The guidelines allow amendments at any time.
Right.
So, and we could have done this at any time. And certainly, if there's a future change in the blended approach or something like that happens, hopefully it won't, but if it's something happen, we can do another amendment.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. I appreciate that.
Right. Commissioner Gil. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Commissioner Gilmedi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have on the San Francisco Community Central Subway, we've got a ton of correspondence that says that they don't meet the criteria. Could you explain to me, from a staff's point of view, how they do meet the criteria?
Well, I think the key is that with this blended approach, Caltrain is in effect going to be the northern end of the high-speed rail. So right now, with that station that they have there at 4th and King, they do connect. And although in the future, at some point, that will end up being at Trans Bay, we don't know when that will be. So we can't really choose a project on a future construction that, at the moment, as far as I know, is not even fully funded. So in terms of getting the Caltrain into Trans Bay. So I think that in terms of connectivity, it connects now, and we're looking at benefits now. I think that for future, even if it doesn't fully connect, it's close. It also meets other portions of the law. So it does, even if it's not fully connecting in the future, it still meets the other portions of the bond law.
Are we going to be subject to legal challenge?
I don't see how we could. I think legally we're covered.
Well, you're connecting now, but in the future, high-speed rail is going to go into the Trans Bay terminal.
But again, connectivity, although a priority, is not the only legal requirement.
So it's just a priority and not,
Correct.
not the whole.
It is the highest priority, but it is not the only requirement.
Thank you. Commissioner Arp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question kind of spins off of Commissioner Frommer's questions and comments. If the high-speed rail vote does not succeed, my understanding of Prop 1A, but I could be wrong, and this is where I'm trying to get a confirmation. My understanding of Prop 1A is that there would not be an avenue for the legislature to appropriate the connectivity money separate from that. It has to be either all together or none.
It's not required to be that way. That is what's being recommended by the administration. But it's not required. These monies could be appropriated separately. Now, whether or not, if the legislature did that, I don't know if the governor would still veto it just because he didn't get the bigger piece. I don't know if they would do that. But it's not required to go with that other piece.
Well, okay, because that's not what the voters voted for, frankly. They voted for a high-speed rail system. Connectivity is an important part, and I totally support the program and the blended system and the connectivity projects, but frankly, I got a big problem with giving the connectivity money to anybody if the rest of the project isn't going to go forward. If somebody thinks that they're going to get their cake and eat it too, and vote against the high-speed rail and still get these projects, I do have a problem with that.
Well, and to argue for the agencies, even if the high-speed rail does not happen, all of these are good projects with standalone utility and would help the traveling public right away.
Commissioner Guardino.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to thank Commissioner Gilmetti for his question about the Central Subway, because I was going to ask the same one, and I thought it was an important one, so thanks for clarifying, Laurel. We've all received lots of letters on this and phone calls, and I don't know this gentleman, but a gentleman in San Francisco named Bob Feinbaum, I don't think he's here today, but I'm happy to read from his letter. One of his questions was the one that Commissioner Gilmetti just asked. The other one doesn't ring true to me, but in fairness to him, I'll just raise it. He questions whether regional agencies put these recommendations together in a way that was open to the public. That just doesn't strike me as what our regional agencies do. So could someone address that so that...
Well, and obviously San Francisco Community is here and to speak with some information, but I would also...
MTC or whomever is
right,
appropriate.
but I would also add, remember, this project was originally approved over 2 years ago. And so there's been many opportunities. They had a chance 2 years ago, so they knew about it then. We mentioned it at our last commission meeting, and in fact, I think we had speakers. And then again, it was brought up at the High Speed Rail Authority board meeting, and there were speakers again. So it's not new or different.
That would be wonderful if Ken doesn't mind speaking. And while he comes up, Laurel, I want to thank you again for not only your work on this, but for your comment that these 11 projects in and of themselves provide value. And our role in this $9.5 billion bond is the 0.950. And I'm pleased with what I see on this list. I think you've done a fine job.
Thank you, Commissioner Guardino. Commissioners Kenneth Cow with MTC. To address your question about public involvement, MTC did bring the item to our commission through our Programming and Allocations Committee and the full commission under Resolution 4056, I believe, which adopts the blended strategy that we work very closely with High Speed Rail Authority. And of course that, as Laurel mentioned, went to the High Speed Rail Authority, and now it's at this forum. So there were many opportunities for comment, which we did hear.
Ken, thank you. I just think it's important to have that on the record so that this gentleman understands that there were opportunities for public comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Henman, did you have something?
I'm not sure if the three-strike rule applies to us with this list, but let's assume we can get it right this time. A question I have, it really goes to Commissioner Frommer's comments. Often when you don't have agreement, then some last-minute negotiating occurs and things change a little bit in order to achieve a mutual goal. So it feels like there might be something that happens that we don't know about. So is there a way for us to put in our amendment some wording that would help us communicate the fact that to the best of our information, or that once this is approved on an approved business plan or something, it still seems like it's a moving target, and we're taking a little bit of a risk that it might change a little bit.
Well, I think the one thing to remember is that the projects are under the purview of the agencies, because the funds are put out by a formula based on the law. So I don't think that any negotiations in the legislature would change the projects at this point, unless the business plan completely dropped the blended strategy, at which point then all of the projects would have to come back again, I think.
Orange County.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm just not totally clear yet, so I want to make sure that I understand what's going to happen here. If we vote to program now, and if for some reason the whole project doesn't get approved, the legislature could still appropriate. What you're telling me, the legislature could still appropriate money for these, and we've already made our decision, so that's it. We have nothing else to say about these projects or the money going forward. So no matter how we might support these projects, we basically have given the go-ahead for a piece of the money to get funded for some projects that I think are worthwhile projects, but that isn't what was put on the ballot. That's not what the voters thought they were voting for. That's not what they're going to get. They're going to get a few improvements at the, here and there that are good projects, but the rest of the project will never happen if under the scenario that I'm. So, and there are people who are voting on this project who may think that they could get this money and will vote against the overall project.
Well, I would say that you do have the option of deferring until the budget is done, but I would say that we did sort of make a commitment to the High-Speed Rail Authority that we would do this adoption in May or June, partly to put that pressure on, I think, to let them know that there are projects waiting, that we do need these appropriations.
Laurel, if we deferred for a month, what would that? I mean, do we lose anything? 'Cause I share Commissioner Arp's concern about moving, and you're right. Some of the projects may not change, but I think for me, these projects came to us from High Speed Rail as part of a larger package and a deal that related to the plan. So if they're not going to do that plan in the legislature, I'm comfortable with some of these projects. I've got to be honest with you. I think some of them are a little iffy. That's my opinion. But, so if we waited a month for the vote?
I don't see any major negative consequence because we couldn't move forward with allocations until there's a budget anyway. So it's not like we're going to have allocations in July.
Right.
But, we would try to avoid delays as much as possible. I know these agencies are really anxious to start, but a 1 month is probably not a major problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmetti?
Yes, along the lines of what Commissioner Frommer and Arp are discussing, when is the vote for high-speed rail? Do we know?
It's now, I think.
Yeah, I think they're looking at it right now.
So why don't we delay it 1 month so we know what we've got and what we're approving? I agree with Commissioner Arp and Commissioner Frommer. I'd make a motion to delay this till next month's meeting.
Sorry, yesterday she didn't say
I have a motion. Do I have a second on that?
Hold on a second. There's a motion to delay.
Motion to delay.
Would you, Commissioners, would you like to hear from any of the agencies who are here to support this project?
Why don't we hear?
Let's hear from the agencies.
Let's listen. Joel, is Joel? And then Gus? Then Marcia?
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Executive Director Reinhardt. I'm here today on behalf of the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency in support of the recommended program of projects that's in front of you for high-speed rail connectivity. This is an exciting day. A month from now will be an exciting day as well for the project and for our agency. I've given you some handouts describing the benefits and scope of the Central Subway project, some of these that you may have seen before. San Francisco has a keen stake in the success of high-speed rail, and the Central Subway project will ensure that direct connections exist as soon as the blended plan brings an electrified Caltrain up the peninsula into San Francisco. The project, unlike 2 years ago, is well under construction, having completed 2 major utility relocation contracts and has recently awarded a $233 million tunneling contract with work well underway. Under the connectivity program, the project will receive an additional $61 million that could be put under contract within weeks after the funds are allocated. Moreover, the $61 million will leverage a full funding grant agreement that's imminent, worth $942 million of federal funds. So it's a key piece to the puzzle. The full funding grant agreement is now circulating in Washington, D.C. We expect execution of that agreement in September. I want to take one more second to thank Laurel and CTC staff for working so hard with us and the other Bay Area transit operators and the MTC. Of course, we hope for a positive vote today, and we'll be back a month from now if needed. Thank you for your support for the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Gus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Gus Corey here on behalf of the California Transit Association. I didn't really want to get up, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the Commission and your staff in particular for doing a fantastic job of coordinating with all interested parties. To Commissioner Farmer's point about whether or not the commission should adopt the list, we sat in my office with Executive Director Reinhardt Laurel and with Andre, as well as the High Speed Rail Authority and Department of Finance. Part of the reason why the funding has been line itemed over the last 2 years is because there was confusion from finance over what the funding would go towards. And I think your staff has done a remarkable job of really working with the administration to make sure that they're cognizant of what the funds are going to go towards. I think Laura did a great job of actually articulating the utility of the projects. For example, for Caltrain, for example, that's a once-in-a-lifetime investment that's going to result in electrifying the system, reducing operating costs in half, and doubling ridership. So I want to thank Commissioner Guardino and Gilmetti, as well as Commissioner Arp, for basically wearing out the carpet in the governor's office to make the pitch for high-speed rail funding. With respect to where the legislature is in the process, I've been making the rounds along with others in the building, and it's no secret. The Senate is really the sticking point. It's going to be a tight vote over there. There's a Plan B that's obviously circulating around, which is proposing to take additional funding from the Central Valley and invest it in the bookends. There is no interest on our end from any of our association members for that proposal. I think people are pretty comfortable. We've been talking with the unified voice with what's Plan A, which is to go with what we have. And so a vote was expected to happen today, but it's been delayed until maybe Friday or perhaps even next week. The legislature may even come in after the 4th of July holiday for a couple of days to sew up issues such as high-speed rail, which are still looming. So I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to the legislative process, but we feel fairly comfortable that in the end the votes will be there, and to the extent that the commission does approve the list, that's only going to help our lobbying efforts in making it tangible to your legislative delegation to say, look, the commission already approved the list. With full confidence, you could vote on this appropriation knowing that these projects are going to be funded. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Marcia Devon. I'm BART's Deputy General Manager. I'm here this morning representing the BART Board of Directors and BART General Manager Grace Kernigan. And on their behalf, I'd like to thank Bimla Reinhardt, Commission staff, and members of the Commission for your leadership and commitment to integrating the high-speed rail system with local and regional transit systems like the BART. BART is pleased to be a stakeholder and investor in the high-speed rail solution that was developed through the cooperative efforts of MTC and our sister agencies in the Bay Area. As partners, the BART Board has agreed to contribute $38 million to the cornerstone project in the Bay Area's regional plan, the electrification of Caltrain. The program before you will provide a viable connection between BART and the high-speed rail system at our multimodal Millbrae station. The high-speed rail business plan projects nearly 5,000 daily passengers will transfer between the high-speed rail trains and the San Francisco International Airport using BART at the Millbrae station. The business plan also projects a flow of 1,800 additional daily riders connecting from high-speed rail to the BART system to access the 4 counties we serve. To accommodate the increased passenger traffic to and from high-speed rail, BART intends to make the following improvements. BART will run new direct service between Millbrae and SFO to accommodate the new high-speed rail riders. In order to handle the extra East Bay riders who will be going to or from the high-speed rail BART connection at Millbrae, BART trains operating on the peninsula will be configured at their maximum length of 10 cars, and track improvements will be made at Millbrae to support the additional service to allow storage of more 10-car trains. These improvements require 46 new rail cars, which would be added to the contract we just signed to begin the replacement of BART's existing 669-car fleet. BART is the backbone of the Bay Area's regional rail network, and we can help maximize the public's benefit of high-speed rail through connectivity projects such as this. BART and its partners have worked hard to support the region's economic growth by expanding to SFO, the Oakland International Airport, and to San Jose. Our goal now is to connect with the rest of the state through this incredible high-speed rail program. Again, I want to thank you for your help and support.
Thank you. Any questions? None? Thank you. Next speaker, Patricia.
morning. I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro. I would like to talk to you briefly about our project for Prop 1A funds, the Regional Connector. The Regional Connector will facilitate travel between the San Fernando Valley terminus of the initial operating segment of the high-speed rail and the many Metro rail stations served by the lines it connects, which are the Metro Blue, Gold, and Exposition light rail lines. The Regional Connector will allow one-seat rides between Long Beach and the San Gabriel Valley and from Santa Monica to East Los Angeles. It will relieve capacity issues on the red and purple lines. We are expecting to be at capacity on those lines by 2020, and the high-speed rail would tend to place additional pressure on that capacity. So we want to be ready for it. I just wanted to share a couple of additional notes regarding the issues being discussed today. We have planned to use the Prop 1A funds within 2013, which is the coming fiscal year. And I believe by the STIP guidelines, which tend to get applied to the bond programs, we would need to have the programming vote within FY 2012 to be able to access the funds within 2013. We also are nearing completion of the design of the project and are nearing readiness to enter into the full funding grant agreement for a significant amount of New Start's funding for the project. So this is a key, important vote to us this morning. And we might just also add that we believe this program is consistent with what the administration is working to achieve, and we would hope for an action today from the Commission that would support that and work towards the administration's work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Diane Nakano. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Engineering Construction for Sacramento Regional Transit District. We'd like to offer our support in the list of projects. We have a connectivity project, and with the long-term planning for high-speed rail, this works well with the blended system that's been put forward. We would also like to reassure the Commission that this project has independent utility. It is a future component to our system out to the airport, which allows travel really throughout Sacramento County all the way out to the airport and points beyond once high-speed rail does get to Sacramento. And we would urge your support of this list. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, we have a motion and a second on, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for Patricia Chen. It sounded like if we delayed a month, which puts us into July, that would be an issue. Is that true, Patricia? I'm sorry. Take the shortcut. That's my understanding, and I don't have a copy of the guidelines with me. Maybe I could defer to staff.
No, I think if we program, she has, some time to allocate and then 6 months to award. So you have a little bit, you still have time in 12-13.
She said it had to be programmed in 12.
Can the programming vote be taken in the same fiscal year with the allocation vote?
Yes.
Okay, then that leaves just the New Starts issue that we are depending on $2.9 billion worth of New Starts funding for the project, and any kind of vote that does not look favorable for the project can delay that.
Would it be advisable to try to get we've got the rest of the day to vote. Can we vote on this later and try to figure out some of the answers to these questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Arp, we can go ahead and put this item later on in the afternoon.
And in the spirit of Commissioner Arp's comment, I understand why there is hesitancy by at least several of my colleagues about moving today and share their frustration with the legislative process. I'm still leaning towards acting today and acting in the affirmative for some of the reasons that Laurel stated. These are good projects that are part of our $0.950 billion. that work well on their own, that will work well with the overall system should it come together. And I hope we would be sending a message to the legislature, to the High-Speed Rail Authority, as well as to the federal government that we're committed to moving high-speed rail forward in California. So is there a member of our team who can help us get answers to these questions during our deliberations today so that we can bring this back?
Commissioner Gardino, we will do that.
Great. Thank you.
May I?
Yes, good.
I know that you have indicated that it doesn't matter which way we go, that it's dependent on state action. But is it possible for us to word any approval that would be conditional upon state action? I know it's just stating the obvious, but at the same time, it might be a solution to the concern that maybe there's not full support for state action, even though there might be support for a particular project. So while you're looking at all the alternatives, could you possibly look at that one as well?
Certainly. We can always add language to the resolution. In anything you would like to recommend, we can certainly look at doing that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gilmore, did you have something?
Well, I'd be prepared to amend my motion instead of a month to the end of the day.
It's a quick month.
11:59.
All right, so then we will, as I understand it, we will vote on this later on today. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 18, I believe.
Okay, Commissioners, item 18 is also an action item. This is an item to approve the updated formula shares calculation for the state-local partnership program out of the Prop 1B. And these are the calculations for 2012-13. I've attached the guidelines. They have not changed since 2010-11. At that time, we indicated that these guidelines would stay in effect through the end of the program, and we're recommending that we continue to do that. The formula share calculation has been updated using the most recent data through June, and wanted to just note that this is the last year of the 5-year program. The Commission's authority to program and allocate these funds expires at the end of June 2013. So we want to just remind agencies that they need to come forward to program and allocate this year. And also, now that we have the final share calculations for this last year, we're going to have to true up a couple of the agencies' programming because they programmed against estimates, and so they're a little bit over or a little bit under, and we'll fix that. But staff would recommend your approval of this item.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
Move to recommend staff's approval. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 19.
Item number 19, Commissioners, is an adoption of amendment to the Corridor Mobility Improvement Account Program, and this is an action item to program project award savings. I'd like to first note that the Contra Costa 4 and the San Diego 805 projects have been withdrawn from consideration. With that, staff notes that the remaining projects on Schedule 1 in the book item are ready to list and consistent with CMIA guidelines, and recommends that the Commission program these projects.
I have a motion. Any questions?
Move approval.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 20.
Item number 20, Commissioners, are the CMIA project baseline agreements consistent with the projects you have adopted. Again, I would want to note that the San Diego 805 baseline has been withdrawn, and with that, staff recommends approval of these project baseline agreements.
I have any questions?
Move it. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 21.
Item 21, Commissioners, are CMIA project baseline agreement amendments. Again, these are related to the projects that you adopted in item number 19. Again, I would note that the Contra Costa 4 project has been withdrawn from consideration, and with that, staff recommends approval of these project baseline agreement amendments.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 22.
Item number 22, Commissioners, is a CMIA policy for programming and allocating allocating project cost savings and contract award from July 1st through December 2012. In order to maximize the use of CMIA funding and the resulting transportation benefits, the Commission adopted a ready-to-allocate strategy for the programming and allocation of accrued project award savings at its April 2012 meeting. Under this strategy, the Commission programmed and allocated CMI award savings only to those projects that were ready to list and eligible for allocation by June 30th of 2012. Any project cost savings beyond June 30th, 2012 were not considered at that time. Staff recommends that the Commission direct staff to work with Caltrans to adopt the following policy. First, identify State Highway Operations and Protection Program projects currently in the procurement phase that are also CMIA eligible per current Commission policies. Develop the necessary documentation and bring to the Commission a request for action to program and allocate an appropriate level of CMIA savings to these SHOP-funded projects. Develop the necessary documentation for the Commission to deallocate an equal amount of SHOP funding from these projects to program to other SHOP projects as directed by the Commission. Develop a specific program of SHOP projects subject to the same accountability requirements applicable to the CMIA program, taking into account the north-south proportions of the CMIA accrued savings and emphasizing the start of construction as a controlling criterion. Staff recommends that the Commission adopt this proposed policy effective July 1st of 2012.
Any questions? And before we move on here, we have 4 speakers. I think maybe we'll have them come up. First is Dawn, and Kenneth, Patricia, and Gary.
Good morning. I'm Don Tatson. I'm the chair of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And before we come bogged down in discussing how to allocate the CMIA savings, let's celebrate that there are savings to allocate.
Yes.
And speaking of celebrations, last week we held a groundbreaking for the Sand Creek interchange, for which the Commission allocated CMIA savings back in January. And then later today and in the next few months, we're going to be returning $5 million in additional CMIA savings from other State Route 4 projects. And so we thank you for your trust in us and want you to know that we're keeping our promises to you. We recognize that the SHOP is underfunded. But I also concur with previous speakers that there are viable opportunities in July to program savings that you did not allocate today to other CMIA projects that can meet the criteria of the ready-to-allocate strategy and can commence construction before year-end. I say this because we have one that can be advertised as soon as we receive funding and can be awarded in September. Therefore, we support the idea that the adoption of the proposed policy be postponed for a month or so. However, we know that even if you postpone the adoption, people are going to continue to think about it. And therefore, we recommend a modification of the first action described in the report. Currently, the proposed first action recommends that staff work with Caltrans to, quote, identify SHOP projects currently in the procurement phase that are also CMIA eligible for current Commission policies, unquote. We ask that you modify the proposal by directing staff to also consider other mobility projects that are CMIA eligible for current Commission policies. If you make that change, there could be other conforming changes to the other conditions or actions. There are 4 reasons that support our request. First, these mobility projects reduce the short-term needs for SHOP funding, as many include rehabilitation and reconstruction work on existing state highways. If these mobility projects did not exist, the requirements for SHOP funds to maintain these roads at their current capacity would increase. Second, the mobility projects provide substantial leverage. As was noted earlier today, the initial investment of $4.5 million in CMIA fundings has now leveraged another $6.5 billion or more. Local agencies like ours provide much of that leverage as we access funds that might not be available to a SHOP project, including, in our case, local city contributions, developer fees, voter-approved sales tax, and toll bridge revenue. The additional leverage results in more benefits to Californians and more employment. Third, often the lifetime of a mobility project is greater than that of a SHOP project, meaning that the taxpayers who are paying off the CMIA bonds at the end of their life will still enjoy the projects that the money built. For example, our projects are going to be constructed with long-lasting material that may cost more, but will withstand the stresses of traffic on one of the worst congested corridors in the United States. Bridges will be replaced, not just rehabilitated, and should last 75 years. Finally, the mobility projects are often targeted at areas where the need is greatest, and so the benefits of the expenditures are the highest. For Contra Costa, we have projects on State Route 4 that have been rated by Intrex as the 10th worst commute in the entire United States, and on I-80 westbound, which is also rated as one of the worst commutes in the Bay Area. So again, when you consider this policy proposal, please modify the qualifying projects and the first action to include mobility projects that meet CMIA criteria, leverage other funds, and can be started this year. And our staff would happy to work with the CTC staff on exact language. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow with MTC. I'd just like to support Chair Tatson's comments and also to support Jose Nuncio's comments earlier about being supportive about the SHOP eligibility for CMIA, but to also extend the ready to allocate policy for another month or two so that additional mobility improvements can be proposed by the regions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Patricia Chan. We believe that there is merit in the proposal to sweep up savings into the SHOP program at the end of the CMIA eligibility period. However, we also recognize that in many areas of the state, there are still very meritorious traditional CMIA-type mobility projects. Additionally, on some projects with cost savings in the construction element, there are cost increases in other phases such that on the net, there are no overall savings on the project. We are asking for your help in making CMIA savings available for deserving projects for the next couple of months through August. We request that you amend the recommendation to keep the current ready to allocate policy in place for 2 more months. This would give us the time to take advantage of the policy and ensure that our entire program of state highway projects can be implemented in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I join with the other folks in asking that you at least delay this while I'm a strong supporter of a strong and healthy SHOP program. I do think that in terms of just keeping faith with where we started, and it's gave me an opportunity to come back and look at the list of projects throughout the state that we actually talked about in 2007, and there are still opportunities, in my opinion, to advance the CMIA program. We have projects that are ready. You're hearing others that have projects that are ready that will allow us to advance all the projects that we have on the list. And so, given that we are using bond dollars, so it's our kids and grandkids are going to be paying for this stuff, we ought to absolutely make sure that we're spending this in a way that hopefully when our kids and grandkids get there, they'll be able to see some benefit from that. And I also would argue or advocate with the Commission that while we need a healthier SHOP program, well, we ought to talk about that. And we ought to look about it in the next cycle about the fact that SHOP ought to get the first call of dollars before we have STIP dollars. So I think there are other mechanisms to try to deal with the SHOP needs that we have while still taking advantage of this once in a lifetime kind of opportunity with bonds. And as we look into the future, for those of us that have been looking at workload curves and et cetera, you always see this cliff, the mountain curve that Caltrans always puts together. And as we look out into the horizon, there's not going to be many more opportunities, at least in the short term. We're not seeing a lot of good news from the federal government. So I would advocate that we take every opportunity we can to do as much as we can with what the voters said yes to in 2006. And I think there's some opportunities to still advance the program. And at the end of the day, if after we've turned over every rock and looked at every opportunity to advance the CMIA projects, the list that we brought you at the beginning, then yes, then we're an advocate to try to enhance SHOP. So we would join with others in asking that you, delay your policy for a few months while we work and look to see how much we can get done before we wrap up this very important program. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Peter?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Peter DeHaan with the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and with me is Jay Spurgeon, the Public Works Director of the City of Thousand Oaks. And we agree with the other speakers that have already come in terms of leaving the door open for other CMIA eligible projects. In our case, we have programmed in fiscal year 2016 in the STIP the Highway 101 widening project in Thousand Oaks, but that project is actually going to be ready for an allocation in August. So it's certainly a project that could be considered for CMIA cost savings. And Jay will say a few more words about the project.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I want to put a face to a project. This is in Thousand Oaks. This project is an interchange with the 23, 101 and 23. It's in the center of Thousand Oaks, and this makes it extremely important to our city, and so much so that our City Council, on 3 separate occasions, have committed general fund monies to move this project along. The first time was a couple of years ago. The project was not funded for design, and the City Council was willing to put up $6 million, again, out of our general fund, to get the project moving forward. Now, fortunately, and thanks to, I think, your work, we received ERA funding to do the design. That design is now done. But then the council stepped up again and committed half of the project cost, $20 million, half of $40 million total construction, as a match for Tiger grant funding. We tried for 2 rounds of Tiger funding. Both times the City Council committed that $20 million. Unfortunately, as you heard earlier from FHWA, we were not one of the 3 California projects that received Tiger 4 grant funding. But we're determined to move forward, and this project is perfect for CMIA and meeting your goals of congestion relief and improved operations, job creation. Goods movement from the Port of Hueneme in Ventura County, which is the only deep water port between LA and San Francisco. So I think that the way that the local jurisdiction, the City of Thousand Oaks, has stepped up and has committed half the money. I mean, this is leverage for moving this project forward. This project will be ready to list August 8th, so I think some of the comments previously, we would certainly agree with adjusting the time frame as part of the policy. And so we appreciate the Commission's consideration of this. We really appreciate Caltrans and District 7 Director Mike Miles. Thank you for your staff's effort in moving this project through design and getting it ready to go. We're shovel ready, and we hope that you'll consider flexibility in this. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any question? Thank you. Commissioner Gomedi?
Yeah, just a short comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of you know I've been harping about the shortage of funds for the SHOP program for the 9 years I think I've been on the commission. And when the bonds were first approved, the original intent was to have $1 billion put into the SHOP program. And it was cut back to $500 million, and we were thankful to get that. Now we have an opportunity where most of your projects are all funded, your original projects. You're coming back to us asking for more money, and I appreciate that. But it's time someone stands up and speaks for the SHOP program. And so I'm very much in favor of the staff recommendation to take these excess funds and backfill the sorely needed SHOP program. So I'm going to vote positively for staff recommendation.
Commissioner Arp?
Yes, and just to clarify, these would be project. I mean, there's SHOP projects and there's SHOP projects. We would have some oversight or review of the particular projects that Caltrans would be submitting on this particular chunk of money.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner.
Maura, you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, Commissioner.
The money would be moved to projects that would meet all of the CMIA requirements. So we would not just move them to just any pavement job. These would be major projects that meet all of the CMIA criteria. Then the projects that would be brought forward to use that new capacity in the shop would also require commission approval, and they would be held to the same accountability requirements. So these would be major projects, and they would be quite valuable to the state and the regions as a whole.
So I like landscape and sound walls, but not as much as other stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. We would be looking at major projects.
Commissioner Semi?
Yeah, it's a question for staff. What's the downside risk of delaying this for 60 days?
You know, Commissioners, there's a few points that I think you need to consider, and I wanted to elaborate on them anyway. To your point, originally the Ready to Allocate policy was to run through June 30th for some very critical reasons. One is that projects need to receive an allocation so that they have time to advertise an award. And this, with the statutory deadline of December of 2012, leaves projects that are allocated in the end of June just 6 months. And for major projects, that is not an unusual amount of time, particularly if there's anything such as a protest in there that could delay award. So I think when you move beyond July 1st, you are increasing the risk of projects being able, if you allocate in July and August and certainly in September, you're clearly increasing the risk that those projects may not be able to award by the statutory deadline, which is a requirement. Second of all, as we stand after programming the projects you have programmed today, we have basically no savings left in the north as of today, and only about 25 or 30 million left in the south. At this point, based on the agenda that is proposed for July, there are no deallocations, so those amounts would not change, which would mean you would not have any capacity to program new projects in the north in July and only a small amount in the south. Again, we don't know exactly what August will bring in terms of deallocations, but at this point it doesn't look like there will be very much. The large savings that we would expect because of the number of projects that were allocated in April and May would really not come until September, October, which would be extremely late to allocate and expect projects to advertise an award. So even though in some sense there's no harm to delay, I'm really not sure that it brings very much benefit either.
So if we did delay to, say, September 1st, to take, so that this project that's ready in August, we can take advantage of any savings, any additional savings can automatically be programmed into SHOP, correct? And would there
Right.
be
The
enough
way the
time
policy is set up, yes. We would then bring projects forward for your consideration from the shop.
That's already ready to go?
Exactly.
So there's really no harm then? Would there be a harm?
Well, there's the risk that, there's the risk that if you program projects in July and August and certainly in September that they would not be able to award within the statutory deadline. Also, you're raising the expectation that you are going to program when you may not, and it may force regions to push projects and spend extra funds to move those projects more quickly when there really is no real availability of funding for them to receive to move that project forward. I would see those as risks.
I want to go back to Commissioner Arp's comment because I think he was headed in a direction that would certainly make me more comfortable. Right before Commissioner Arp and I came on the commission on March 1 of 2007, people like Commissioner Gilmetti and Alvarado and Tablioni and their colleagues at the time had to make really tough decisions on what would be on that CMIA list, and with staff did just an excellent job under intense political pressure to put together a list that we were all proud of that would benefit our state. As Commissioner Arp said, I would really want to make sure that we were able to thoroughly review whatever staff recommendations have for those SHOP projects, that we just felt fantastic about them. So he mentioned, I think, would we have some say? I'd need a lot more than just some. I'd like us to be as engaged in that as our colleagues were in that original list that they did in, February 28, 29 of 2007. And any feedback from those who were here at that time and put that list together would, I think, benefit all of us here on the commission that weren't with you at that time.
Commissioner, the projects that we would propose to use the funding for would be brought for your consideration and approval and would be thoroughly vetted both by staff and by the commission.
Motion to approve staff recommendation. No, I have a question here.
I just, I want to say to all the agencies who've come up, I know that everyone's got a project and we all want to see this money, but we just don't know what the pot of money is going to look like. And that's crucial to me. At the end of the day, I do not want to see any of this money left on the table. I think that would be inconsistent with what the voters want. And I think there's too many ifs right now going into the fall of how much money we'll have, what projects. I know that with the staff, there's only a certain number of projects out there that we can even consider for this. I think we all know what they are. It's not like there's a mystery out there. So I'm inclined to support the staff recommendation today. I agree with Commissioner Guardino that if we're going to put the money ultimately through the shop, we ought to be very actively involved as a commission with staff, determining what those projects are, and keeping our commitment to the regions in terms of how we put the savings back into those programs. So I think somebody made a motion. I'd be willing to second it.
Bobby made a
And
Commissioner?
My main motivation for making this motion is we just can't afford to leave anything on the table.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on to item number 23, I know some of you are looking at your watches. We will be taking a lunch break at 12:30, so if you can hang on while we'll do it at that time. Just so you know that we will take a break.
It's only been an hour, it's been a whole hour since Commissioner Guardino's had second breakfast. I don't know if you can wait for that.
Item number 23.
Item number 23, Commissioners, is an adoption of amendment to the State Route 99 program. There have been project cost savings in the 99 corridor program, and there are two projects that are being proposed. These meet the requirements of the program, and staff recommends approval of this item.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 24, please.
Item number 24, Commissioners, are the State Route 99 program baseline agreements. These agreements are related to the projects you just adopted into the program, and staff recommends approval of these agreements.
So moved. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 25 is information. Mike?
We're going to get the slide presentation started. Well, it's good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm not here today to talk about the I-5.
You can.
But you are here.
But I am here.
Finished?
Pardon me?
Is it finished?
Oh, yeah. A little background on this. This took place during the commission meeting in Riverside on December 14th, and I was sitting next to Ray Wolf, and we started getting pages, and the initial pages said Route 60 and District 8, so I was very grateful because I was waiting to give a presentation on I-5, only to get the bad news within a few minutes that it was actually in District 7. So Ray went out kind of in a shock to answer the phone, and when he came back, he was smiling, and by that time, I had gotten the call saying it was in my district. So it was a Christmas present. We're having some technical difficulties. Well, let me go ahead and
Mike.
Get started. Like I said, on December 14th, 2011, there was a tanker fire underneath the Montebello Bridge on Route 60. It was an undercrossing, and the tanker truck actually broke down underneath the bridge and caught fire. What happened was the drive shaft broke, ruptured an air line, and when the air line broke, it immediately sets the brakes on the trailer so that the truck could not move, so it burned up underneath the bridge and caused extensive damage. It was a big news item. This was 11 days before Christmas, kind of the last shopping days right before the holiday. There's a large shopping mall that utilizes these exits to access, so Malcolm and I and others had some very late nightly meetings discussing how we were going to put in place detours. There was also a hospital that was served by this particular overcrossing from the city of Montebello, so it was a very critical route for the community, and we needed to move quickly on getting this bridge and the Route 60 opened back up, so we started working around the clock. As you can see, it was a pretty extensive fire. It did a lot of damage to the bridge. We actually, after testing and analysis, we had to completely demolish the structure, which we did. We got an emergency director's order to do that. That was in the range of about $3 million to tear the bridge down, which we did, and we were able to open the Route 60 back up within about 3 days. So it happened, and then 3 days later we opened the route back up. We put in place detours. We worked with MTA, Federal Highways, to get emergency funding for the demolition and also for the reconstruction of the structure, and we were able to replace the bridge. We had hazmat crews that had to go out and clean up all the fuel. When we started demoing the bridge, one of the things that was a major concern to us and a stumbling block was we found that there was asbestos in some of the conduits that were in the bridge that were utilized by AT&T and different utilities, and there were some fiber optic cables in there that ran to different locations. So coordinating with Southern California Edison and AT&T and others to get the utilities relocated was a big effort that took a lot of time, and we were able to do that. So we actually received some help from Commissioner Inman on getting some of the Edison lines removed and also working with the phone company. Investigation, we went out and did coring, had the samples analyzed. We actually had to come back and demolish the entire structure as a result of the testing that we did. Caltrans Director Malcolm Dougherty suspended the State Contracting Act by using a director's order authority. The authority was granted by state legislation under the contract code that's listed here. We then received a declaration of an emergency situation from Governor Jerry Brown, which enabled us to seek federal assistance on the demolition and reconstruction of the bridge. So Vince, if you're still here, thank you very much. We treated this as very much as an emergency because of the reasons that were given as far as access to the hospital and disconnection between the different communities for fire and police services. So we were able to demo the bridge and reconstruct it in a very short time by using emergency response processes, which enabled us to set aside the State Contracting Act and also made it where we didn't have to do environmental assessment, which we now have to go back and do, and we're working with the resource agencies on that to determine what the mitigation is going to be for setting aside that environmental review initially. So all in all, to make a long story short, it took 5 months and 5 days for Caltrans to demolish this bridge. It was 250 feet long, 96 feet wide. We designed the replacement bridge, which is now a little bit longer because we added extra width so that if we put in HOV lanes on the 60, it'll accommodate that. We won't have to make any modifications to the bridge. We also widened it out to standards by today's standards. We added ADA capacity or accessibility to it, sidewalks on both sides, and we're going to be going back and making modifications to the ramps in the future. And this is a picture of what the new structure looks like. And so that's our story on the Paramount Bridge, and I'll ask if there's any questions. I don't want to stand between lunch. Yes.
With your permission.
Yes, Commissioner Gilmetti.
I heard something that I I'm having trouble with. You said you have to go back and provide mitigation to rebuild a bridge that was already there?
Yes.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
That's one of the dumbest.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, when you have an emergency situation, you set aside the environmental review process, and then after the project is completed or when it's near completion, then we have to go back and work with the resource agencies to determine if there is any mitigation needed for the construction of that new bridge.
Well, I have a name for that. It's called extortion.
Yes.
What could they bring up to me?
You know, they could request more plantings. They could request landscaping, different things like that. We may have to plant trees in some other location to mitigate for the pavement that we put in. I don't know. We're still working with them to determine what the mitigation will be, but there's generally some type of mitigation that you have to do after emergency projects.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I agree.
Is this a CEQA requirement or some other environmental law?
It would be part of CEQA because we set it aside.
Thank you.
I can't believe it.
There's another one.
I got this. This isn't over with yet.
Give yourself a negative deck.
There may have been nesting birds out there. I don't know. I mean,
I bet.
Not after the fire.
Yes, Commissioner Inman.
And so, and to finish the story, the department now is analyzing the strategies that we use to expedite this project, and we're going to be coming back at a later date to see if there's any of those strategies that we can use in the future on normal projects to try to help expedite them. But this is an unusual situation when you have an emergency like this because you are allowed to bypass a lot of the standard rules. Commissioner Andrews?
Well, having said that, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to add that as well. As a business person that's on that corridor a couple of times a day, typically, you not only got it done in a very rapid manner, but the impact to all of us. My boss shared that he didn't think he ever even slowed down very much. So I did remind him the slope for the cone zone rule. But I think the traffic flow really did, the impact was minimal there. So hats off to all of you. And I think it's ironic that we were having a briefing about bridge replacements, I think at exactly the same time that your phones started ringing. So I really want to commend you and all of your team and everybody, Vince, you too, who made this happen because it is a critical corridor for our region, and it's nice to see that we really can mobilize quickly when we're allowed to pull all the different resources. So Malcolm, thanks to your whole team and Mike and Vince, everybody.
Thank you.
One of the mitigations is going to be a no truck parking sign.
Well, we had another tanker
We like
fire.
goods to move.
We did have another tanker fire on the 134.5 a few months after this one, and so we have requested DMV to change the driving test and say, if you have a tanker fire, park underneath a bridge, B, park underneath some electrical lines, C, move to a clear area, or D, none of the above. But we haven't heard a response from that.
Thank you.
Mike, is there a video or not? Oh, and there is a video if you're interested in seeing it.
Not right now, thank you.
Okay.
You're between everybody and lunch here right now. All right. We're going to do item number 26.
Item number 26, Commissioners, is an update on the Gerald Desmond Bridge. The Gerald Desmond Bridge is a TCIF project, and Eric Shen of the Port of Long Beach is here to give that presentation.
Thank you. No, I really feel the pressure between everybody and lunch. And Mr. Miles, I will take the trucker anytime for our bridge. And thank you very much. I'm very glad to provide you with this update. And I will be very brief. My presentation will cover a few major points, including the project overview, procurement, and our schedule, budget situation, and oversight and coordination up to date. The uniqueness of this project is that the bridge currently is owned by the City of Long Beach. The new bridge will be transferred to the state upon completion. in Commission's November 2010 meeting, the Commission authorized the bridge to be constructed and delivered through the design build delivery. And the main project features will include, it will be a cable stay bridge. It will have 3 travel lanes in each direction. And yes, it will have bike lane and a pedestrian path over the new bridge. In terms of procurement, it has been a very historical process up to this point. In the last 18 months, the project team totally switched from a design bid build process to design build. In a short 18 months, we were able to issue requests for qualification, and 17 teams responded to the request for qualifications, and 4 teams were pre-qualified. We follow a very robust evaluation process that was based on best value. 20% of effort was placed on technical merit, and 80% was based on pricing. And proposals were jointly reviewed by the Port, Caltrans, Metro, and our consultants. Out of the 4 teams pre-qualified, 3 teams submitted their proposals. And I will just quickly mention the price differential among 3 teams. Shimmick team, their proposal was right around $614 million, who also had the highest technical score. Dragado team submitted a proposal at around $743 million, and Skanscott's team, their proposed price was $895 million, and Shimmick team, or SFI team, is therefore selected as the team to carry this project forward. In terms of schedule, Board of Harbor Commissioners of Port of Long Beach issued notice of intent of award on May 4th, and we are in the final stretch of getting all contractual documents ready for the board's approval on July 16th. And we intend to issue NOI in mid-September, and construction will begin in 2013. Here's the funding breakdown by budget, by funding sources. Majority of funding comes from the state. The Port contributes $114 million, and Vincent and federal government does contribute $317 million. And by category, majority of the budget will go towards the design build portion of it. And one uncertainty where we have the highest risk category is in the utility relocation, and the team continue to work very closely to contain the cost, but that is one category that the cost potentially will go up as we get additional information, additional detail through design build process. Lastly, I just want to mention the last 18 months has been very challenging and very exciting. We're very fortunate to have very close coordination through several layers of project oversight and coordination. I have to mention the leadership that's provided by CTC staff, executive level, Malcolm and Vincent, Mamano and Rick Backlund, and also all of the staff involved. That warned us to come this far in the last 18 months. And we still have a lot of work to do, but I think if we didn't do such close coordination, we would not have been here today. So here's a rendering based on the indicative design that was included in the RFP. The final design could alter just a little bit, but the main feature of 2 single tower cable stay bridge will be the main project feature. With that, I would just mention our project website is newbridge.com. Very clever, easy to remember, and I'll be glad to answer any question you may have.
Thank you. That is a nice-looking bridge. And we're going to get a little off here a little bit. We're going to go to item 140.
Yes, Commissioners.
If you would, please.
Item 140 is a financial allocation request, and this allocation request of $30 million is for the Gerald Desmond Bridge, and this is to cover the project oversight costs. and staff recommends approval of this allocation request.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think probably I'll take 27 before we go to lunch, and that won't take very long, I don't think. Or I'll ask it not to take so long.
What's the wrong one? This is victory lap.
Chair Tavloni, Commissioners, Co-Mayor Gise, I'm delighted to be here today. What I'm going to try and do is real quickly before lunch give you an update on the financial close on Presidio Parkway, as well as talk about what other projects we're considering under the P3 program.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, man.
I would second that, too. Just before I go forward, I think it's important that I take the time to thank all of the folks that were involved in getting us to this point. Vince mentioned the work we did. Federal Highways was very instrumental in getting us to close, and we actually did break a new ground for the nation in P3 as a result of this project, and we'll talk about that in a short while. But there are just a lot of people, and it starts with committed leadership that we've had in the department with the director and those before him on the P3 program. But we've also had some real wonderful staff folks in the district and headquarters, as well as advisors to get us to this point. Just for orientation, the project, the Presidio Parkway project, is being constructed in two phases. Phase one, as the director mentioned, is done, essentially done, and that's the yellow that you see on there. We attained substantial completion on that a couple of months ago. Phase two is well on its way. We're almost fully designed on phase two. And in fact, there is some temporary, early construction activities beginning on phase two as we speak. We issued a kind of a temporary NTP3 for that. And the construction activities in full swing will begin in the summer. This sort of is an orientation on schedule. We basically have taken 2.5 years from when this was a concept that was approved at the PIAC, January of 2010, to financial close. In that time, we've gone through a period of litigation and dealt with that, and we've had some pre-construction activities to the point where we are about 95% design. And we just finished the financing process, which actually restarted after the litigation was done, was completed last year. And so it took us about 6 months to get through the financing process. We expect that construction will occur and come to a conclusion in the middle of 2015. What that really means is, even though we've had a whole year of delay because of litigation to get financial process going, the effective delay is within about 4 to 6 months on getting the project constructed and opened. I'm going to skip through this real quickly. The key dates on here are October 16, 2010 was when we selected the bidder. January 3rd, 2011 is when we had a commercial close on the deal, and of course on the 14th of June is when we had financial close. We expect, just per agreement, we expect our NTP2 notice to proceed number 2, which is when the concessionaire takes over the site, to occur within 60 days of financial close. So that will be sometime in August. And we also, per agreement, we expect construction to begin no later than the end of August of this year. The key financial terms that folks might be interested in is as follows. When the bid came in, we had a $254 million design build package that was in the bid. That was the basis of the bid. As a result of the delay, we lost the hold we had. We had a whole year hold on the bid, but because of the litigation delay, we lost that hold as of August of 2011. Because of that hold, because of that that because the bid expired, we had to renegotiate the design build package. The cost grew by about 6.7%, about 17%. So you have a design build package of $271 million. That compares against an initial estimate, not an engineer's estimate, but an initial estimate of $473 that we had for the entire capital cost in the Phase 2 program. The map that we came out of the commission with when the commission approved the project for P3 was $35 million, like the director said. We expect the map to be at $22.1 million and may actually adjust as we go forward, even maybe a little bit lower. We maintained the debt-to-equity ratio in the process, so there's still about 12.5% equity in the deal, and that's to make sure that the GLC has skin in the game. This is the sources of private financing that's in the package. They have a bank loan of about $166 million. And the TIFIA came in at us. It was supposed to be one TIFIA loan of $150 million. They came in and had two tranches of that loan, and that really affected how we set up the funding. However, what it did for us, it was actually an advantage because we were able to take advantage of short-term, very low rates in the short-term tranche, and had more money come to us in that short-term tranche at a very low rate. And so that really affected how the financing worked out. And that includes about 46 million of private equity. That makes up the 12.5%. The way the payment obligations we have in the deal is a milestone payment at the end of substantial completion, and then availability payments annually for the 30 years of the term of the project. The milestone payment, it was set at $173 million when the commission approved this project. It got bumped to another $12 million because we didn't have enough local funding coming in as a result of the economy, and so we had to increase the bank loan that was going into the project. And TIFIA went down because the local funding was supposed to pay TIFIA. So TIFIA went down from $103 million to $91 million. And so that's $91 million you see there. So basically, the funding was flipped a little bit. The AP is $22.1 million, like we said already, and that's going to cover the O&M life cycle cost and the things that make up the AP. Real quickly, the short-term rate that we got from TIFIA was 0.46%. That's a short-term 3.5-year loan that TIFIA obligated. It's really incredible for funding at any time, and so we were very fortunate. In many respects, the delay actually worked in our favor in some, if you want to see it that way. And the long-term rate came in at 2.7%. Now that compares against the bid rate that we had posted for TIFIA at 4.5%, which at the time we were going out to bid, TIFIA was hovering around 4%, between 3 and 4%. The bank loan, again, when the bids came in, the bank loan rate based on the money market information we had at the time was about 3.1%. At close, it was down half a percentage point, so that also worked in our favor. Basically, what we have when we did the bid, the column in the middle, the total AP payments, we were anticipating making upwards of about $900 million in total AP payments. Because of the rates and where the financing came in, our total AP is around $700 million. So we have a major gain there. Basically, the difference is over $300 million in total payments on the project as a result of the close. We set some precedents in this deal. Obviously, this project is the second AP deal in this country. But as a result of the efforts of our efforts, and I have to bring Jose Luis' name up here because he was very instrumental in forcing the issue with the federal government as well. We're able to get the federal government to participate in the long-term payment scheme of this project. And they came in at 81.6% of total payments was agreed to by the federal government in reimbursement. So we will have most of the monies reimbursed at the federal level because they were able to see it our way ultimately. So that sets a precedent for P3s in the country, and they in fact just published a paper on that a lot of states are really anxious to look into as a result. We also set a precedent, I believe, with the debt competition that's a wrong spelling. It's debt competition that we have. The IPDC is sort of a new technology that I think we've brought to the market, and a lot of other states are beginning to use it. We are one of 32 states with P3 authorization, and this is one aspect that I think through the agencies of our advisors we're able to use on this project and use successfully to get the rates that we got. I'm going to skip this. Going to the other projects that we're considering real quickly. There are in fact 6 projects that are actively being considered as potential P3s. I'm missing the High Desert Corridor, which is a 63-mile corridor in Southern California. Most of the top 3 projects are going through various phases of just environmental analysis and work to get them ready. The last 2 projects are past that stage and are actively being looked at more closely as potential P3 projects. Let me start with the 156 project. The 156 project is a short corridor of 7-mile corridor between 101 and 1, and the potential is to toll that segment of roadway. It's a widening, 4-lane widening on the new alignment, and the opportunity to toll it looks very promising. And in fact, I think as of today, the TAMSI board is considering going out to the market to retain a consultant to do a traffic and revenue study on that project. So that's one that is actively being considered as a P3 project. Depending on where the TNR study comes in, we might see a project go to procurement early next year. The second project is probably even further along. It's one that came through discussions at the LA Metro level, and so working with our District 7 office, we're working with LA Metro to this project's been referred to as the bundle, and it's a $700 million package of improvements. Talk about goods movement. I think you see that in the title. I didn't make that up. It was intended to speed the project, accelerate delivery of this project, to actually advance construction on some of the projects up to about 10 years as a result of using this delivery method. We expect to have an industry outreach. It's been scheduled for July 9th, and so there is a lot of activity in the market on this project already. LA Metro has been leading the discussion for the most part, and we're beginning to work very closely with them. And we expect that if all things square out, we'll be back to the Commission talking to you about this project towards the end of the year. The project has potential for tolls on the I-5 corridor. There's a 14-mile segment of the I-5 corridor in Santa Clarita that we're looking at as a potential hot lane. I think that's the end of my quick presentation.
Any questions?
One question.
One question.
Comey, is the department looking for availability funds, or are we going to do this with new money?
On the bundle?
On any of these?
I think one of the things that we've learned is, at least in the U.S. market, that most deals are going to be AP deals because the revenue risk is not tenable for most in most markets, actually, especially in this country. The revenue risk will require almost a 30% equity load on the project. Now, you might say, well, that's good, they have more skin in the game. It makes the project even more expensive for us because the equity rate is a little higher than your typical debt rate. So what we're seeing across the country is that you'll see more availability payment type deals with tolls arguably involved in in the makeup of the project. So you'll see toll revenues, but toll revenues in a lot of cases might not be enough to cover the project. So you'll see.
So availability payments are basically going to take away from other regions.
Not necessarily, because you basically the public sector will collect the tolls and turn around and use the tolls to make AP payments. And what you want is to have the tolls cover the AP payments, but in many respects you might not be able to make that work. You might still have to have some
I'm
public
okay with
funding.
tolls, I just availability payments, taking it from someone else gives me heartburn.
I don't know about taking from somewhere else. I think each of these you will see the deals come to you, and I'm sure you'll have a say on how we put them together.
Kumi, I hope you send a thank you note to PEG. By delaying the close of the project, you got to take advantage of these historically low financing
rates.
I'm writing it.
Any questions? Yes?
And I'm also glad to see the AP numbers come down. Those are the numbers that I had come up with in the $20 to $24 million range.
I remember that very vividly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And I hope not. Then we will return in 45 minutes, please.
Synchronize your watches, okay.